Welcome. This video is going to focus on making reporter blocks and blocks with multiple inputs. So I've got a character here and I want to teach him a couple new tricks. I'm going to make some new blocks, some new instructions, and we're going to start very simple. So we know how to add a number to itself. So if I've got 5, I could do 5 plus 5 to double it and get 10. I want to teach him a block, though, that's called double a number. And what I'd like him to do is I'd like it to work kind of like this, except only to have one input, so I don't have to put 5 plus 5. I just put 5 in, and he doubles it. So let's start by making a block. And I'm going to call double, and I know I'm going to put a blank in there, an input in there. And I want this to be an operator. That seems like what it goes with. There's one more thing I'm going to do. This is not going to be a command. This is not going to be something that just does something. This is going to be a reporter. The difference here is a reporter is going to give us back an answer. So my double block should be a reporter because it's going to give me an answer. It's going to tell me what double my number is. So double, I want to add an input. So we'll add an input name. And the input will be called number. That seems to make sense. Don't have to, but I'm going to go make sure that it can only be a number. So I've got double number. And right, if I go look under the operators now, I will have this new block called double. And I could put in 5. And so my job in this block is to calculate the answer and then to report it back, to give it back to wherever this was called from. And the way I report back an answer, and we already know how I'm going to do the math, I'm not always going to add 5 plus 5. I'm going to add whatever the number I was given is. So if I'm given 5, that will be the number, and I'll do number plus number. And if I'm given 23, then 23 plus 23 would be 46. And the way I give this answer back is I report it. And I can do that two ways. I can either at the end of the block say to report this. So if I do that, I can see the block reports back 46. And notice it says it here, not out there. Right? This is very different than having the character say the answer, because this block is actually going to turn into that value. The other way I can report an answer is under control. If I go down, there's a report block. And so I can use this instead. If I use this, then I don't need that. So how do I double a number? I report back the number plus the number. That's 46. And because we report back the answer, that means we can use that as part of doing something else. So I can say double 5 and then add 1. Right? We get 11. We double 5, we get 10, we add that to 1, and we get 11. If this is how we do not want to do it, but if I just say what the answer is, so let's say I do that and then don't report anything. Well, yeah, he tells me 10, but this block itself doesn't turn into anything. It doesn't kind of contain the final answer. The answer just appears out here. So then if I try and build on that, we don't get an answer. There's no way to build up something based on this. So the big difference there says it out here, and that means that all it's doing is appearing on the screen, and we don't get to actually make use of that value for anything else. Versus report, where when we report, kind of the immediate effect is to show us right here what the value is, but because really that's the showing us here is just kind of a placeholder for showing us that this whole block is really turning into 10. And so if I do something like this, we actually can chain on that and build up a bigger answer. So pretty much if you're building up a block, unless the whole point of the block is to announce something on the screen, you should not have says inside the block. Unless, like I said, you're explicitly, the point of the block is to say a message, or maybe you put them in there briefly to just kind of announce things as you go and test things out, but your final block should not have says in it. Alright, so we've got a new block that can double a number. Right. Now let's make a block that will tell us the smaller of two values. Right. We've got blocks that take in two inputs, and that's what we'd like. Essentially, we'd like to have something that says smaller of blank and blank. So let's go start building that. So we'll go to variables, and I'm going to make a block. And this sounds kind of like an operator, and I'm doing some mathy stuff and giving back an answer. I want to get an answer from this. I'm going to give it, input will be two values, and I expect it to tell me which one is smaller. So because I want an answer, that means it should be a reporter. And if it's just going to go off and draw a picture of something, it can be a command. But if I expect an answer back, it should be a reporter. And so let's see. Actually, I'm going to do larger of blank and blank. Now, I can't really type the blank and blank there right now. So I'm just going to leave larger of. And now we can kind of go build up larger of number 1. Notice no spaces when we're giving something names like this. Generally a good idea not to have spaces in there. So number 1, and I'm just going to leave it any type. And then I want to put in some plain title text, and then I'm going to put in another input name. So here I'll put number 2. So our block now, if we go out and peek at what it's building up to look like, larger of blank and blank. So I'm going to get it to put in two pieces of information. The first one is going to be called number 1 inside my block. The second one will be called number 2. So I can make use of those to make a decision. If I'm making a decision, right, that sounds like kind of an if. So if number 1 is less than number 2, then it's smaller. Let's actually phrase that with greater than. So if the first number, just drag that down, is larger than the second number, then what that means is the first number is the big one. And so what I want to do is report back, hey, that first one, that's the big one. So let's go to Control, and I'll find the report, and I will say report number 1. You may notice the report doesn't have any notch on the bottom. It's not designed to connect to anything else. As soon as we get to report, we're going to stop executing this code. We're going to take that as our answer and basically go back to where we were and use that answer here. So even if I put extra stuff after the report, well, first of all, it wouldn't fit. I can't force something to go after there because the report means we're done here. This is our answer. So the else, well, if number 1 wasn't bigger, then either they're the same or number 2 was bigger. Either way, we can report back number 2. Because I'm reporting inside here explicitly with the blocks, I don't need to do it down there. I'd actually encourage you to do it just explicitly with the blocks like this. So let's hit OK and try that out. The larger of 2 and 4 is 4. Let's try 6 and 4. 6, that seems to work. Now, we can use blocks to kind of build bigger blocks. I can smash things together like this to say I can double 5 and do the larger of doubling 5 and 4. So let's compare the 10 and 4 and give me 10. I could duplicate this and say give me the larger of 6 and 4, and then, so which I know will be 6 here, Then compare that to 5. All right, I'm going to get the largest of 6 or 4, which will be 6, and then we'll compare, okay, since this part becomes 6, then it will say basically larger of 6 and 5, and we'll end up with the 6 overall. All right, if that one turns out to be 7, we'd do 6 and 4 first, the inside innermost block, and we'd get 6. Then we'd compare that to 6 and 7, and keep the 7. All right, so we can use these new blocks we've made to build up bigger, more complicated programs. And we can even define new blocks in terms of old ones. So we're not going to be doing this a whole lot yet, but down the road it may be a handy trick for us. Let's say I want to make a quadruple block. Let's go ahead and go to variables and make a block. And we're going to do a quadruple. It'll be a reporter. And we'll do OK. So how do I quadruple number? Well, I really just double it twice. So I'm going to have to take in an input. I have to know what number I want to quadruple. So we'll call it number. And I know I'm going to return an answer. So I'm going to report back. And what I'll report back? Well, let's double the number and then double that again. So I'm going to build it up kind of like this. Take whatever number we're given, double that, and then whatever you get from doing that, double it again. This basic recipe, double, double. If I start with 3, it's going to take me 12. It's going to quadruple it. So the basic recipe seems sound. So now I can build this up and actually use it in my block. And let's go test it out. So I've got quadruple. I give it 15, and I get 60, 4 times the number. And the way we built the block is using these other blocks we've built. This is the way real software systems are written. Someone writes a chunk of code, maybe something like double, more likely something like draw a window on the screen, and makes a function out of that, makes a piece of code that other people can use to build more complicated programs on top of. For now, we're not going to be using this block inside a block trick a whole lot, but it's worth kind of knowing about that we can keep building layers of abstraction. The one last important point is that these parameters, these inputs, should only be used inside the block. Number here is meaningless out there. You can see I get an error if I try and use it. Number is very specific to this block and has no meaning out in the outside world.